Hey folks, Real Honesty with John Ritlin. I'm John Ritlin, and I want to thank Big Bird 432 for sending me this show topic that he probably sent to me sometime late last year, early this year. So Chris, thank you very much for your patience. This is 10 stars, talents that WCW completely wasted. This is not necessarily ranked in importance of how they were used and everything, because there were certain talents, main event talents, that they used poorly, really poorly. And there were other ones that were for politics or whatever reason. They just didn't use that well. Or attitude issues. But the whole thing is WCW has such a bloated talent roster that not everybody could be on top. Not everybody could be world champion. But there were times that they used some guys in some of the weirdest booking decisions, and it was odd. It was really, really, really odd. And sometimes baffling. So here we go with 10 talents that WCW completely wasted. And this is my opinion, of course. I just want to make that clear. So you can come up with whatever opinions you want. But these are still my opinions. Bret Hart. Because somebody tell me that WCW did not waste Bret Hart completely. Now I know that he couldn't wrestle initially when he came into WCW. That he could appear but not wrestle. Okay, so he couldn't wrestle at Starrcade. Fine. The referee role was probably the best that they could have for him. Or he was a referee in the Eric Bischoff-Larry Zbyszko match. And then he was the outside official for the outside enforcer for Sting and Hogan. And it was a poor use of him. But then they didn't use him at all. Barely. He faced Ric Flair and WCW NWO Sold Out. I think at one point had a U.S. title run in '98. But that didn't last very long because then DDP beat him for that. And it was just ridiculous. What in the world was this? And then he took time off in 1999 because of the death of his brother Owen. Well, he had an injury, and then he took time off because of the death of his brother Owen. But then it took 2 goddamn years, basically 2 years after the Montreal Screwjob to finally give him a WCW title. And then they had him and Goldberg become tag team champions for a week, and then lose. And then Goldberg with the inadvertent kick that ended up ending Bret Hart's career. But just Bret Hart, for the talent that he had, whether he had no fire, no passion, whatever, if Montreal took out a lot of his heart, still, he could deliver some really good quality matches. And they didn't allow him to do that. They did not allow him to do that at all. Anytime, I think the one time he faced Hogan was on some off Nitro, and it was just a way to lead to his heel turn. And it was stupid. It was completely stupid, and they wasted Bret Hart horribly. Yeah, you could argue that at 40 years old, I think he was 40 when he went to WCW, because he was 42 when he retired. Maybe he's on the downside of his career, but he still had a lot of good to give, and they just did nothing with the guy. Any of his title reigns meant nothing. I don't know, maybe he would have been a guy to lead him into 2000 as champion, had that concussion from that inadvertent kick not happened, and had he not gotten more concussions. But it's just, they wasted him. They wasted Bret Hart, and it's absolutely baffling. And now we go to Mikey Whipwreck, who... I was never the biggest fan of Mikey Whipwreck, even though he had a good story being on the ECW ring crew, and he had a good build of being, the underdog guy that got wins out of nowhere. But he had built up a pretty good fan base, even as some of the ECW fans started to turn on. But then he came to WCW, and they just never... He had a few cruiserweight matches, he had a lot of injuries, and was going to take a lot of time off. Apparently, because he only wrestled in a few pay-per-view matches. And I'm sorry, but this was just stupid. It was something they completely wasted. And he was a young guy. I think he was still only in his mid-20s, maybe late 20s at that point. And he could have provided some pretty good matches, and they jobbed the guy out like crazy. So instead of using him decently while they had him, even though he's going to recover from those injuries, nope, they just jobbed the guy out, and it was just basically a paid vacation, essentially. They just took him away from ECW and then gave him right back. He got paid good, hopefully, but yeah, they wasted him completely. And then Public Enemy, yeah, 2 guys. A team that was really, really super over in ECW. WCW, they faced the Nasty Boys in about 80,000 matches. He was your dog collars, tables, street fights. The Nasty Boys couldn't fucking work either. Public Enemy sort of could, but just chose not to because this gimmick got them the most money. But yeah, they were in WCW for a bit. It's like a couple of years, and they just, I think they had one tag title reign, and it lasted, what, a few days? That was about it. Other than that, they were just cannon fodder. They were just put out there just to job to people, job to people, job to people. And anytime they won, it didn't really mean anything. And then it went to WWE, and, well, we know what happened with that, with the Acolytes. And they even came back to WCW for a little bit, but didn't last very long. It's just, they were one of the tag teams from the loaded tag team division that WCW had for a number of years. They were one of the ones that was pretty wasted. I'm not saying they were great workers, but they were pretty wasted. And then you go to Booker T. Now, this one might be controversial because people can say, oh, but Booker was a five-time WCW champion. In the course of about what? Like 8 months? He won his 5th title on the last episode of Nitro. And he had won his first title at Bash at the Beach 2000. The last Nitro was March 26, 2001, by the way. 5 title reigns in 8 months. I don't give a shit who you are. That's ridiculous. But, yes, he was a world champion, so yeah, he might be ranked a little lower, but I'm sorry, this is shit. Because he was one of those guys that should have been champion about 2 years before he was. And I mean WCW heavyweight champion. He's a great television champion, even though he didn't hold the title for too long. He's a great tag team champion. So in that respect, they used him well. But it took forever for them to use him properly as a single star. Like, by 1999 and stuff like that, it's like, okay, he was still delivering some good matches. But creative was just off the rails. They just didn't know what they were doing with him. And then the whole thing about fighting over the T and the Booker T name and the Harlem Heat name. And no one cared about any of this shit. I don't know who came up with the idea, but whoever came up with that idea, it wasn't good. I mean, if it wasn't good, and it was executed even worse. I mean, the idea might have worked as something funny, but just didn't work at all. And Booker, for as good as he was, and good as, I mean, you know, he was good for a number of years after WCW, and he was good for a number of years in WCW. Like, pretty much from the first time he came in there with his brother. They were a great tag team, and they had a really good run. And his singles run was fine. But always felt like he should have been champion about 2 years before he was. And that's how I feel that they wasted Booker T. Because he could have been champion at least once in 98, and I think it would have worked. I mean, seriously, I think, in retrospect, maybe you could have had Booker T versus Hogan instead, at some point, and you could have had Booker beat Hogan. I mean, even if in 98 it would have seemed like it was out of nowhere, guess what? Might have gotten some really good eyeballs there. Because by the time Booker T became champion in WCW, it didn't matter. And that's really sad for Booker, as talented as he is. Then we go to Medusa. She dropped the title in the trash, the WCW Women's Championship in the trash, in December of 1995, after leaving WWE. And then was fighting over who got to beat up a motorcycle at Hog Wild 1996, about 8 months later. And that about encompasses her run in the company. Oh, she also lost a title, or a title versus career match. It was a Great American Bash at the Beat 1997. I kind of meshed those pay-per-views together, even though both are pretty good. And then came back as part of Team Madness, was the Cruiserweight champion at one point, despite being a woman, and there's nothing wrong with that. Medusa's legit tough, but the Cruiserweight title was being thrown around like crazy, and then she had to feud with that stupid, fat, worthless fuck Ed Ferrara, and I will continue to call him that. He's a gutless, stupid son of a bitch that mocked JR's, Bell's palsy. And that's pretty shit. But yeah, Medusa, after that moment, that was her biggest moment, is dropping the title in the trash. And then they pretty much forgot about her. And then she was, doing this. They tried to have a women's division in WCW and a women's championship. And I actually forgot about that. They didn't defend it often enough. I'm not saying the women's wrestling was what it was now, but the women deserve better. They deserved a lot better. And so did Medusa. She, for having that moment, one of the best moments in the Monday Night Wars, honestly, especially in the early days, but in the Monday Night Wars period, that would actually be ranked in the top 10 possibly, because it was pretty shocking. But they wasted her. They completely wasted Medusa after that. And then, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we're up to number 6. Bam Bam Bigelow. He was in the hardcore division a lot and beating people up, and in the hardcore division and earning better money than he did in ECW. But he was better than that. He's part of the Jersey Triad with DDP and Canyon. That was a cool, little trio. But Bam Bam was gone soon after that, and it's really sad because one of the best big men, could move like great. The Greens from Asbury Park, or he would, he would do the moonsault, the backward, the splash, off the top. He would hit the driver. He would just hit a lot of really good moves, and he was really agile. He could do drop kicks. He could move really well. And they turned him into a hardcore dummy. I mean, he had a feud with, at one point, Hardcore Hack, which, by the way, Sandman was god-awful. God-awful wrestler. I don't know about human being, god-awful wrestler. But yeah, Bam Bam completely wasted. I mean, I think he was only in the company for, a year and a half. I mean, they seemed to have something there with him attacking Goldberg, and it didn't work at all. Big shock. And then we go to Steve Austin, who, yes, was a tag team champion, a TV champion, and a WCW US champion. Could have probably been the heavyweight champion. Yeah, he was hurt. maybe he should have at least gotten a few shots at some point, even if he never won it. He was a long-reign TV champion, long-reign US champion, decent reign tag champion. Had some really good matches with a variety of opponents. Easy for me to say. Teaming with Brian Pillman was great, but it always felt like the ceiling was here when the ceiling should have been up there for Steve Austin. Because Steve Austin, they used him in the mid-card. And he was so much more than the mid-card. Now, granted, maybe he wouldn't have gotten where he was had he stayed in WCW. In fact, he probably wouldn't have. One could definitely not argue with that. But you always think that they could have done something more with the guy. Now, he, again, won championships, but it always felt like they could have done more with the guy, and they didn't. They didn't do it at all. Though, a lot of Steve Austin's WCW work was really good. Slamboree 93, check out that cage match that he had. Tag team cage match. Dos Hombres versus the Hollywood Blondes. It's funny how I remember that. And then Eddie Guerrero. Now, Eddie Guerrero did have the car accident late 98, early 99, where it took him out of the business for a bit. So he was recovering from injuries. But Eddie Guerrero, for being a great cruiserweight champion, I believe he was the U.S. champion at one point. He was a TV champion. That guy was money. That guy was a license to print money. And the whole LWO thing and not being booked well, and the whole Revolution thing, which was crap, which was him, Saturn, Malenko, and Shane Douglas, if I remember right. I think they even tried to get Benoit to join it, but I don't think that worked. But just Eddie could have been so much more in WCW. Because he delivered some great matches in 96 and 97. 98, I mean, he was still delivering good matches, but they were kind of stupid angles. In 99, I mean, he has comeback, which was great. It was great. I mean, he should have probably been out of the ring a couple more months. His body was still probably beat up, and he felt he had to get back to work. But Eddie marginalized, especially in the last couple years in WCW, which is sad. I mean, he achieved great things in WWE, but they kind of wasted him. Especially in those last couple years. Chris Jericho. Now, again, controversial choice because he was, I think him and Eddie were tag team champions at one point, or it was like just for a couple days. And he was a cruiserweight champion on multiple occasions. He was TV champion. I believe he was even the U.S. champion. But that feud with Goldberg in particular is one reason why they completely wasted him, because he got over big. Got over massive, got over huge. And it was it was something that they really could have sunk their teeth into. And they didn't. Goldberg didn't want to work with him. And it's just after that, like the stuff that Jericho did with Dean Malenko earlier in the year was brilliant. And especially when he turned heel, when he was the white meat babyface, it was whatever. I mean, he's a great worker, don't get me wrong. But his heel run was one of the best. But then by 99, they were just, they had, by 98, by that Goldberg thing, they were completely jobbing him out. They didn't care about him. They just didn't seem to. He was just getting squashed. He had the ceiling put on him. And thankfully, after a number of mishaps in WWE, achieved great success and continues to achieve great success. But yeah, they dropped the ball with Jericho, as money as he was. And then Dean Malenko. Now, Dean Malenko really wasn't the best promo. Like, at all. It's not that Dean wasn't capable of talking, he just couldn't talk on camera very well. Though he did have he had a couple decent promos, like short promos, like the Ric Flair, the future is staring you in the face, and something like that. When Flair was going through one of his President for Life things, and the younger guys didn't want to be held down. It was weird. The Cruiserweight Champion. Great worker. Great worker. Cruiserweight Champion, U.S. Champion. I don't know if he's a TV Champion. I think he was Tag Champion at one point. TV title got passed around a lot, but I know he's a U.S. Champion. Should he have been WCW Champion? I mean, there was a time when he was over enough where it might have worked. But for him especially, 99 and 2000, it's like he could still put on good matches. And he was teaming with Benoit, and they were having some great tag matches. But they had just basically pigeonholed him into a role. And just, it's like, don't try to get over, don't try to do this. And it felt like they always could have done more with Dean, and they didn't. I mean, and yeah, granted, at the time, especially from 95, 96, 97, they had Nitro at first an hour, then 2 hours in mid-96, then 3 hours in 97, or starting, I believe, in later 97. And then they had Thunder, and I mean, that was ridiculous. But they also had WCW Saturday Night. They had a lot of TV programming, and you could have gotten more out of these guys. And it just, I don't know, it just seemed like there was just no way for talents like Dean Malenko to get over more than they were. I mean, I'm not saying he did great in WWE, but that was near the end of his career. It just seemed like WCW could have done more, maybe given him a shot at the heavyweight title. Whether you would have believed it or not, at least it would have been different. But anyway, those are 10 talents that I believe WCW wasted. Again, thanks to Big Bird 432 for suggesting this. And I have more, by the way. I wrote down a couple more. I want you to tell me talents that you thought were wasted, and I will plug your YouTube channel or your YouTube name or your Twitter name, whatever you want. And also like, share, and subscribe. It's been Real Honesty with John Ritlin. I'm John Ritlin. I will see you soon.